Yesterday, we were sitting around making small talk over at the Meals on Wheels. A fellow popped up and we were talking about being forgetful. And it's the evidence of things that are not seen. I've never forgotten anything in my life. Somebody else popped up and said, "See how quickly he forgot?" So it is, isn't it? Pride goes before a fall, as the scriptures say. And speaking of falls, we are towards the latter end of that fourth kingdom that has been spoken of several weeks now here in the pulpit. We're at the very end of that time, aren't we? It was a terrible kingdom. Daniel recorded it. The word terrible was used. And it certainly fulfilled that word in many respects, hasn't it? Both in size and in wickedness that has gotten so prevalent in the earth. And so I would like to swing from there into my subject this morning concerning our faith and our works. The Bible speaks about faith, doesn't it? We've all read that word many times. It's been preached from this pulpit countless times. Hebrews 11, in the first verse, gives us a description of this word, faith. It's the substance of things hoped for, and it's the evidence of things that are not seen. Sum it up very briefly, you could say under the substance of things hoped for, that's the belief. And under the evidence which shows that faith is the works. That's the evidence. You know, we hear of evidence when we speak about the different criminal cases. What kind of evidence do you have that this took place? You know, you can't really bring about a murder case unless you have the evidence of the body to show that the deed was done. And so it is with faith. Without the evidence to show that it's there, it can't be seen, can it? Cannot be measured. So it takes those two. I think about faith, and we can apply it in worldly ways in a sense also. We all have the confidence that when we walk out this door after worship service this morning, when we get in our car and turn the switch on, it's going to run. Now, we have that much faith, don't we? We know what's going to happen if we go out there and turn the key. We're going to get a result. That's a kind of a faith, isn't it? And we're not there yet, but we know that it's going to take place. We have faith in many things as far as the world is concerned. We have faith in our employers, for example, people who we work for, that once we have accomplished our labors, we're going to be rewarded with a check for our work. That's a kind of a faith. And again, we find the two principles applied, don't we? We have faith in the various systems around us, such as our governmental agencies. I kind of put a question mark on that one because sometimes we don't carry a whole lot of faith in our governments anymore, do we? But nevertheless, it's there. And if it's functioning the way it was designed to function, it does produce for us. It's just that man has corrupted it, hasn't it? Traffic systems. I think of the massive traffic system that we have in this country. in the last 30 years, it's expanded to such a degree that I suppose those who originally thought of it never had any idea that it would be in the gigantic fashion that it is today. But we have the confidence that when we get on this highway and follow the rules of the road and do those things that we're supposed to do in our vehicle, we are going to reach our destination. That's a kind of a faith. But in every effort, in every instance that was just mentioned, it's our personal efforts or the works that we did that's going to get us to the destination, isn't it? If we don't follow the rules of the road, what's going to happen? It's not going to work. Think of that poor fella the other day, killed, what was it, 7, 8 people. And he said, well, my brakes failed. Well, I could tend to agree with him because I've dealt with that stuff before, but they gave a rundown on his past record. That tells me that his brakes probably didn't fail. He failed to obey the rules of the road. And so he's suffering for it. And he'll have to suffer for that probably for the rest of his life. And that's just an example where when the rules or the principles that are laid down are not followed, then you don't make it. It doesn't work. And the system breaks down. And that's the way it is with faith, isn't it? If we have faith and we function obediently, then the works show the kind of faith that we have. And we then are on the right track to success or whatever the case might be. Through our obedience to the rules, whatever it is, the requirements that we have to make, then we can obtain the goals that we seek for, whatever it is, be it education, be it in our job, and most important, be it for Jesus Christ. Sometimes we seem to have more faith and confidence in the worldly things than we do the things of God. And that's not very good. Sometimes I wonder if our confidence in our cars to perform is greater than our confidence in our God to perform. Something to think about. Why would a person be lacking or have a lesser faith or not be strong in the faith? Why is it that this tends to happen? Is it because God's answers and rewards do not always materialize so quickly or in the same manner as we expected them to materialize? Many times I'm sure that could be the case. Lord, I need this, or Lord, help us through this situation, or Lord, take this out of the way, and you expect it to be done next week. And the Lord says, I'm hearing you, but you've got to wait 2 or 3 years. Or you've got to do a certain thing first. And it doesn't always come the way we'd like to have it. And so that can be a cause for someone maybe letting down or becoming a little weak in the faith. Makes me think of a joke I heard one time. There was a man who was caught in a flood. And some of you have heard this one. But he's caught in a flood by his house, and it starts to come up. And he steps out the door. A group comes by in a boat and says, come on in, we'll take you off to safety. And the man says, that's okay. I'm going to do all right. The Lord's going to help me. A little later on, he's got the first floor flooded, and he's sticking out the second floor window, and another rescue attempt is made. He said, it's all right. The Lord's going to help me. Finally, at the very last, he's on top of his chimney, The helicopter makes a drop with a safety thing, and he says, it's all right, the Lord's going to help me. And of course he gets swept away and he dies. And he comes before God and he says, Lord, why didn't you save me? And God says, listen. And he said, I sent 3 attempts to you, and you turned them all 3 down. He says, what more do you expect? The Lord sends his help, but he may not come in the chariot like it did for Elijah. And a lot of people, they like to have that kind of a glorious help, you know. And God says, sorry, it's not that way. It may come just in a way we didn't expect it. And so some may let down their faith under such circumstances. But we should not allow ourselves to let our faith slide under any circumstances. We should not always expect what Elijah received, because he was transported to another place, wasn't he? He was later found in another portion of the earth. So it is. Let's not allow our expectations to become so great that we think we have to have it and our faith is weakened because we don't get it. God's faith is not the same, or godly faith is not the same as it is in worldly matters, is it? It has to be done according to his word, not according to how we might think it should be, but according to the word of God. And this makes me think of an old elder we're all familiar with, most of us here. That's Elder Roach. And he said a word one time, I'll never forget it. He said that sentence. I've even written it in my Bible so I can see it from time to time. He said, we make trouble for ourselves if we fail to follow the words of God. And so if our faith is weak, we're not following the words of God, or if it's not complete. And if we should fail that way, we do make trouble for ourselves, don't we? Yes, faith is a necessity. Without faith, we cannot even begin to please God. James, in his book, or in his letter, wrote about a godly faith. And I'd like to share it with you for a few moments in the 2nd chapter, beginning in verse 14. What doth it profit, my brethren, though a man say that he hath faith, and have not works? Can faith save him? How many times have we heard people say, I believe? I can't count the times I've heard people say that. We're all going to the same place. It isn't going to make too much difference. For I believe in Jesus. I believe he's dead. And it says in the scriptures, if you believe, you'll be saved. And that's all it's worried about. Nothing else. But James says something a little different, doesn't he? He says that he that has faith and hath not works, can faith save him? Is that going to be his salvation? And he continues to say that if a brother or a sister be naked and destitute of daily food, and one of you say unto them, depart in peace, and be ye warmed and filled, notwithstanding you give them not those things which are needful to the body, what does it profit? Even so, and he makes his comparison. Faith, if it has not works, is dead, being alone by itself. So the two have to go together, doesn't it? Yea, a man may say, thou hast faith, and I have works. Show me thy faith without thy works, and I will show thee my faith by my works. Thou believest that there is a God? Thou doest well. The devils also believe, and they even tremble. You know, sometimes that's more than I hear from folks around when they say they believe. There's no trembling. But Satan knows what's coming. And he believes, and he even trembles at the fact. But wilt thou, O man, but wilt thou know, O vain man, that faith without works is dead, as James continued. Will Satan be saved? No, he's not going to be saved, is he? His doom has already been sealed. So, there is nothing that will save Satan right now. And yet, he believes. So let's compare that for a moment with the believer. Is it enough just to believe? No, it's not. There has to be a doing. We have a good example in the following verses. In the 21st to the 24th verse. Was not Abraham our father justified by works when he had offered Isaac his son upon the altar? Seest thou how faith wrought with his works, and by works was the faith made perfect. Hand in hand they went together. And the scripture was fulfilled, which saith, Abraham believed God, and it was imputed unto him for righteousness, and he was called the friend of God. You see then how that by works a man is justified, and not by faith only. And it goes the other way around too. We are not justified only by works, but also by faith. So the two have to have a balance, don't they? With belief, we have unbelief. I say with it, I shouldn't say it that way, but the opposite of belief is unbelief. And unbelief is the enemy of godly faith. And with unbelief is the works, which is sin, that it creates. That's the opposite of God. Jesus said in John 8:34, whosoever committeth sin is the servant of sin. That's unbelief, isn't it? When it exists, the very opposite works, which are good works of God, according to the Scriptures, they also exist. Jesus made another statement that is very important, and we've heard it here many times also. Not everyone that saith unto me, Lord, Lord, shall enter into the kingdom of heaven, but he that doeth the will of my Father, which is in heaven. He will enter into the kingdom. Again, we find that it is the practicing that is involved, along with the believing. The works that is involved. You know, Paul was very familiar with this same thought because he almost repeated it word for word, in a sense, when he wrote in Romans, 2nd chapter and verse 13. But not the hearers of the law are just before God, but the doers of the law shall be justified. He just said the same thing that Jesus said. He just confirmed Jesus' words. Did not detract from it one way or another. He did not change it. And this shows us that God is unchangeable. And that if there is any changing, it's always on man's part, isn't it? We are the ones who are changeable, if it should come to that. Not God. That's why he's such a wonderful God, because he's always consistent. He's always there. He's always ready to help. but he won't put up with unbelief and the works of unbelief. You know, we spoke earlier in the message that we're in that final kingdom. And Jesus said some words while he was here on earth, and he said, "When the Son of Man cometh, shall he find faith on the earth?" What a question. Is there going to be faith when I come back? Am I going to have somebody to come back to? Well, we all know that the Scriptures tell us that his people will be here. There's no question about that. The Bible tells us that the gates of hell are not going to prevail against the saints of God, those that are faithful. Well, what is he saying? How great a faith is I'm going to find when I come back? How great is going to be the faith that we have? Will it be strong, or will it be weak? The conditions that exist around us every day makes it quite difficult, doesn't it, sometimes, to be strong. There's no question about it. It requires a great deal of effort. But here again we find it to be mentioned as our reasonable service. And so it should not be that we should not allow it to become too burdensome, because it should be a delight, and that our faith then may continue and increase. What condition will Jesus find the faith? And I bring these thoughts to a close this morning in the words of Jude, 3rd verse. He writes in his letter, he said, "Beloved, when I gave all diligence to write unto you of the common salvation, it was needful for me to write unto you and exhort you that you should earnestly contend for the faith which was once delivered unto the saints." Earnestly contend. It's not going to be something easy, is it? And it seems like the longer we live, the more earnestly that we have to contend. It doesn't seem to let up. But that is the admonishment, or the words that Jude is giving, the advice. We are to contend for that faith. Don't let it go. And for those who have not entered into the faith, as it were, pray that you might receive it and enter in. And then earnestly contend for it. Don't let it go. People tell us today there's no more commandments. It doesn't make any difference anymore. Well, we see the results of that preaching all over, don't we? No more commandments. I can go out and kill anybody I want to. I can do anything I want to anymore. It doesn't make any difference because they're done away with. But we must earnestly contend for the commandments, because that's part of that faith. That's part of that testimony. It's the essence of everything that's involved with Jesus Christ. Blessed are they that do his commandments, that they may have right to the tree of life and enter in through the gates into the city. Think on these things. Let's have an active faith. Let's have a working faith. Let's show our faith by our works. God bless you.